Have you ever looked someone in the eye and felt something was off? Their words sounded polished, their smile rehearsed, yet your gut whispered, "This doesn't add up." You nod along, pretending to believe them. But deep down, a quiet voice asks, "Should I speak up and risk a storm? Or stay silent and betray my own intelligence?" Because when someone lies to you, and you know it, the real battle isn't between you and them. It's between your honesty and your fear of conflict. Someone is lying right to your face, weaving a story that doesn't quite make sense. You can feel the cracks in their words, but you're trapped in that uncomfortable middle ground. You don't want to accuse them and create drama, yet pretending to believe them feels like an insult to your own integrity. Most people respond in one of two ways, both unsatisfying. They either swallow the lie quietly to keep the peace, or they explode in anger and make things worse. But the Stoics discovered a wiser path, a third way, a way to expose deception without accusation or aggression. Marcus Aurelius, who faced political manipulation every single day as emperor, understood something timeless. Truth has a natural order, and lies can't hold that structure under careful questioning. So instead of shouting, "You're lying!" he asked questions, calm, simple, precise, that made falsehoods unravel on their own. Today, you'll learn 5 of those Stoic questions, 5 tools to uncover truth without confrontation. The third one is especially powerful. It quietly exposes fake stories by revealing emotional and logical gaps that liars can't fill. Master these questions, and you'll recognize deception before it harms you, all while keeping your dignity intact. So, ready to sharpen your Stoic discernment? Stick around, hit that subscribe button, and let's get wiser together. Question 1. Can you walk me through that again? But start from a different point. It sounds harmless, yet it's devastating to a liar. Because truthful people can tell their story from anywhere, beginning, middle, or end, since they're drawing from real memory. Liars, however, memorize in sequence. Once you break that pattern, their confidence collapses. I learned this firsthand in college. My roommate Jake once borrowed my car for what he called a family emergency. His grandmother was supposedly hospitalized 3 hours away. He returned 2 days later with an elaborate story, the drive, the hospital, the overnight stay. But something didn't feel right. His energy didn't match someone who'd faced a crisis. He seemed rehearsed. The next day I stayed calm and tried the Stoic way. "That must have been stressful," I said casually. "Can you tell me about it again?" "Maybe start from when you were driving home." Instantly his smooth tone cracked. Details got fuzzy, the hospital name changed, the timeline twisted. Within minutes, the story fell apart, and so did his confidence. Eventually, he admitted the truth. There was no hospital, no emergency, just a weekend getaway with his girlfriend. I didn't need to accuse him. I just asked the right question, and the lie unraveled itself. Marcus Aurelius dealt with deception daily, but his greatest weapon wasn't anger. It was calm curiosity. And that's where true Stoic power begins. After exposing Jake's lie so effortlessly, I finally understood why Marcus Aurelius handled deception with calm precision. He faced officials presenting polished, self-serving reports every day. Reports that sounded convincing on the surface but crumbled the moment they were examined from a different angle. He knew that truth, no matter how you turn it, remains consistent. Lies, however, begin to fall apart when the perspective shifts. Marcus often wrote about the importance of examining information thoroughly instead of accepting easy, convenient explanations. Why? Because the psychology of memory itself supports this principle. Real memories are not stored in straight lines. They exist as interconnected webs. When something truly happens, your brain can access it from many directions. You can start from how you felt, move toward what happened next, or begin with the outcome and trace backward. No matter where you begin, all details link together seamlessly because they are built from authentic experience. Fabricated stories, on the other hand, are linear. They're like memorized scripts, rehearsed from start to finish. So when you ask someone to walk you through it again, but start somewhere else, you're forcing them to navigate a structure they haven't rehearsed. That's when the mind struggles. This mental strain, called cognitive load, makes it harder for liars to keep the story consistent while improvising. Truth-tellers don't experience this. They're not juggling invented details. They're simply describing what actually happened. Epictetus taught something similar. Never accept judgments at face value. Examine them. And that's exactly what this question does. It's not an accusation. It's an authenticity test disguised as curiosity. You're not saying, "I think you're lying." You're saying, "Help me understand better." The difference is everything, so your tone matters. Ask with genuine curiosity, not suspicion. Frame it softly, like, "Could you help me picture that more clearly?" Maybe walk me through it again, but this time from the end backwards. This approach preserves your virtue, your calm, respectful nature, while still protecting your interests. When someone is telling the truth, their responses flow naturally. While driving home, I felt relieved it wasn't worse. It all started when the doctor said she'd be okay. After hours of waiting, we finally knew she'd recover. Every detail connects smoothly because it comes from reality. But when someone's lying, the flow breaks. You'll notice hesitation, contradictions, or confusion. They'll stumble over what came first, change small details, or even deflect with lines like, "Why does it matter how I tell it?" Because truth by nature is flexible. It can stand up from any direction. Lies, however, are rigid. They only survive when told exactly as rehearsed. And that brings us to the second Stoic question, one that digs even deeper. Question 2. What was happening right before that? Liars often pour all their effort into the dramatic core of their story, but they forget one crucial thing: believable context. When people fabricate events, they rehearse the highlight, the explosion, the twist, the emotional moment. But they neglect the small, ordinary details that should naturally surround it. This innocent-sounding question pushes them into uncharted territory, a space they haven't prepared for. One of my friends experienced this firsthand. Her teenage daughter came home 3 hours late, claiming she'd been studying at the library. Instead of reacting angrily or accusing her, my friend asked calmly, "Sweetheart, what were you doing right before you decided to go to the library?" Her daughter hesitated, eyes darting for a moment, then replied, "I was at home, taking a shower." But my friend immediately remembered her daughter had already showered that morning before school. And when she came home that night, her hair was clearly unwashed. That tiny inconsistency was all it took for the truth to start unraveling. That tiny inconsistency. The unwashed hair and the forgotten shower was all it took for the truth to surface. Once my friend pressed gently about the timeline, the story about studying at the library began to crumble. Her daughter finally admitted she hadn't been at the library at all. She'd been at a friend's house, where a few people were smoking. The girl had rehearsed her main story perfectly, studying late at the library. But she hadn't built the world around it, the simple, logical sequence of events that would make the lie believable. She forgot something every deceiver overlooks. Lies need structure, not just decoration. It's not enough to build a beautiful facade if there's no foundation underneath. Marcus Aurelius encountered this pattern constantly as emperor. Every day he received glowing reports from officials, reports polished with impressive numbers and noble intentions. But beneath the surface, Many of them hid failures, exaggerated successes, or left suspicious gaps in the surrounding context. He learned that false information always has missing edges because people focus on crafting the dramatic moment, but neglect the quiet details that should naturally surround it. And that's where the psychology becomes fascinating. Truthful people remember not only what happened, but also how one thing led to another. If you truly experienced an event, you recall the small transitions. What you were doing before, what made you decide to go, how one action flowed into the next. Those connecting threads exist because the event actually happened. Fabricated stories, however, exist in isolation, like islands in the middle of an empty ocean. A liar might say, "I was at the library, but forget to build the bridge leading there." Why did they go? What interrupted their previous activity? How did they transition from one moment to the next? When you ask about the before and after, those missing bridges become painfully obvious. You'll recognize truthful answers easily. They flow with natural, unrehearsed detail. I was watching TV when I suddenly remembered my research paper was due. So I grabbed my books and went straight to the library. It makes sense. There's logic, motivation, and emotion, but deceptive responses? They feel vague, disconnected, or suspiciously convenient. I was just getting ready to study, doing some stuff around the house. No clear sequence, no emotional rhythm. Sometimes they even contradict known facts, or sound a little too tidy to be real. Seneca warned us against accepting appearances at face value. He taught that wisdom lies in examining situations thoroughly, not just believing what sounds smooth. And this second question, what was happening right before that? Captures that exact Stoic wisdom. It widens the lens. Instead of only hearing the main story, you gently explore the supporting context that should exist if the event truly occurred. You don't interrogate. You stay curious. You might say, "Help me picture your afternoon. What led up to you deciding to go there?" That tone matters. It keeps you virtuous, calm, respectful, and in control, while quietly testing whether their story flows like real life, or stands alone like a performance, because genuine experiences have continuity. They flow with logical bridges that connect one moment to the next. Lies, on the other hand, often appear as isolated fragments, convenient islands, without any believable path leading to them, and nothing exposes a lie faster than when someone realizes they forgot to build those ordinary moments, the small, believable details that should frame their grand story. But the Stoics had another insight, one that reaches even deeper than logic. Our third question reveals not just missing context, but missing emotion. Question 3. That's interesting. How did you feel about that? This question is deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful. Because when people experience something genuine, they don't just remember the facts, they remember how it felt. Liars, however, focus so hard on building the facts that they forget the feelings that should naturally come with them. And that's exactly how their mask begins to slip. I once witnessed this firsthand when my coworker Rachel began to suspect that her boyfriend, Mark, was lying again, lying about working late. Rachel had her suspicions, and this time, she didn't confront Mark directly. The night before, he had texted her with a long, detailed explanation. He said he had to stay at the office until 10 p.m. to help his boss prepare for a big presentation. He described the pressure, the late-night teamwork, even the tension in the room as everyone rushed to meet the deadline. It sounded convincing, almost too convincing. But instead of questioning the timeline or accusing him of lying, Rachel used the Stoic method. She simply asked, softly, "How did you feel about having to stay so late on such short notice?" Mark's response was immediate and revealing. He gave a flat, generic answer. "Well, I was a little annoyed, but, it was important for the team." There was no emotion behind the words. No mention of frustration from missing dinner, no detail about exhaustion, no trace of disappointment. Just a smooth, mechanical reply. The kind that sounds memorized rather than lived. Rachel tried again, gently. "Were you worried about letting me down by missing our dinner plans?" Mark looked genuinely startled, as if he had forgotten that his supposed overtime meant skipping their evening together. His emotional responses felt hollow, scripted, like lines from a play he hadn't rehearsed properly. Because here's the truth. Real experiences carry emotional fingerprints, specific feelings, sensory details, subtle contradictions, the kind you can't fake. If Mark had truly stayed late unexpectedly, his emotions would have reflected that reality. He might have said something like, "Honestly, I was frustrated. I kept thinking about how we'd been looking forward to trying that new restaurant, and I felt guilty for texting you so late to cancel." That kind of answer has texture, regret, guilt, humanity. It feels lived, not performed. Marcus Aurelius wrote deeply about the connection between emotion and experience in his Meditations. He understood that genuine events leave emotional imprints. They become part of how our mind stores and processes reality. And often a person's feelings reveal more truth than their words ever could. The Stoics never dismissed emotion entirely. They warned against being ruled by feelings, yes, but they also recognized them as natural signals of authentic experience. When someone fabricates a story, they tend to focus on getting the facts right, but forget the emotional truth that should come with it. Psychologically, this works because real emotions have texture. They carry sensations, a knot in your stomach, a lump in your throat, the restless checking of a phone, and they link to your values, your relationships, and your priorities. Fake emotions, by contrast, are thin. They sound vague, detached, or oddly convenient for the story being told. You can hear the difference instantly. An authentic person might say, "I felt sick to my stomach when I realized how late it was getting. And I kept checking my phone knowing you were probably wondering where I was." That's a real emotional memory. Messy, imperfect but alive. A deceptive response. It sounds hollow. "I was just, stressed about work." No depth, no warmth, no connection to reality. Sometimes they'll even seem uncomfortable discussing feelings. Their emotional tone simply doesn't match the weight of their supposed experience. That's why this question, "How did you feel about that?" must be asked with compassion. The goal isn't to trap or embarrass someone. It's to understand the truth. So ask with genuine curiosity. That must have been quite an experience. What was going through your mind when that happened? When you learn to read emotional authenticity, to feel the difference between real emotions and rehearsed ones, you begin to see through deception with a kind of quiet wisdom. If you're someone who values truth over comfort, someone who listens not just to words but to feelings, comment "Truth Seeker" below to inspire others walking this same path. Because emotional authenticity doesn't lie. Feelings are harder to fabricate than facts, and that's why they expose deception faster than logic ever could. But emotion isn't the only test. Sometimes the truth, or the lie, depends on whether a story can survive verification. And that brings us to our fourth question. Question 4. Who else was there to see this? Nothing makes a liar more nervous than realizing their story might actually be checked. The last question, who else was there to see this, can shake even the most confident liar. Because the moment you introduce the idea of verification, the entire illusion begins to tremble. Even when you have no intention of contacting anyone, that single question plants a seed of panic. Why? Because it forces dishonest people to imagine their story being tested in the real world. And deep down, they know it wouldn't survive. I saw this principle in action with my neighbor's teenage son, Jake. He had told his mom he was at basketball practice after school, but later she found out the school gym had been closed all week for maintenance. When she confronted him, Jake didn't pause for a second. He shifted gears instantly. "Oh, I wasn't in the gym. I was at the outdoor court shooting hoops with my friends. We were practicing free throws for the next game. Smooth, quick, confident. Almost too quick. But instead of attacking his story, his mom stayed calm. She smiled and asked casually, "Oh, really? Who else was practicing with you?" The effect was immediate. Jake's confident energy vanished. His posture stiffened. His voice lost rhythm. He began to fumble for words. Well, some friends came and went. Tyler was there, I think. Or maybe he left early. And then a few others showed up later." His mother just nodded patiently. Then she said, almost as an afterthought, "Oh, maybe I'll ask Tyler's mom about the carpool schedule." That was it. The breaking point. Jake froze. His discomfort became impossible to hide. Within minutes, the entire story collapsed. He admitted he hadn't been anywhere near a basketball court. He'd spent the evening at the mall with friends. The moment verification became possible, the lie crumbled under its own weight. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. As emperor, he managed a world built on reports, political updates, military claims, financial accounts, and he knew how dangerous false information could be. He learned that truth doesn't fear verification, but lies do. Because legitimate events always leave traces. People who saw, heard, or participated. While fabricated stories often live in suspicious isolation, truth is never afraid of witnesses. The psychology behind this is fascinating. Honest people naturally mention others who shared their experience. They'll say, "Oh, Sarah was there with me, she was just as shocked," or "It was pretty quiet, but Tom saw me arrive earlier." Their words flow easily because they're recalling reality. Liars, however, realize too late that they've trapped themselves. They've built a story that requires witnesses. Witnesses who don't exist, or worse, who could contradict them. That's when the panic sets in. You'll see the signs clearly. They grow vague about who was present. They insist no one else was around, or they show visible anxiety the moment you mention another person's name. That's the beauty of this question. It's quiet flexibility. It doesn't accuse, it simply opens a door. And through that door, the truth, or the lie, steps out on its own. People lie for many reasons. To avoid shame, to protect themselves, to impress others, or sometimes to cover something far more serious. But no matter the motive, the fear of verification is universal. Epictetus once said that truth is revealed through careful observation, not blind belief. This question embodies that exact wisdom. It widens the field of inquiry, gently, naturally, inviting people to reveal themselves through their reactions. So use this question with purpose, not malice. Ask with calm interest, not judgment. That sounds important. Was anyone else around when that happened? Sometimes you won't even need to verify anything. The reaction alone will tell you everything you need to know. The sudden hesitation, the change in tone, the nervous laughter. It all speaks louder than words. Remember, the people lie for all kinds of reasons: fear, embarrassment, self-preservation. Your goal isn't to humiliate them, but to understand what kind of truth, or untruth, you're dealing with. When a person's story starts to fall apart at the simple mention of witnesses, you've already learned something valuable, not only about the story itself, but about that person's relationship with the truth. But the Stoics knew there was one more layer, the final and most revealing test. Because even the most careful liars often forget to build one thing, a believable reason for their choices. And that leads us to the fifth question, the one that exposes the core of every false narrative. Question 5. What made you decide to handle it that way? This is where most fabricated stories collapse completely, because people who invent tales spend all their energy describing what happened and forget to create a convincing explanation for why they acted the way they claimed they did. After testing stories with witnesses, we move to the question that slices straight to the core of truth: the why behind a choice. Because real decisions leave messy footprints, second thoughts, trade-offs, fears, and plans. The kind of internal complexity that's nearly impossible to fake convincingly. I watched this question dismantle what looked like a bulletproof lie during a job interview. A candidate claimed they had voluntarily left a high-paying role at a prestigious company to pursue more meaningful work. On paper, it sounded noble, but given their financial obligations and upward career trajectory, something didn't sit right. Rather than challenge the claim head-on, the hiring manager leaned in and asked calmly, "That's a significant move. Walk me through what made you decide to leave such a stable position." The response was revealing almost instantly. Out came the glossy phrases: following my passion, wanting to make a difference, seeking impact. But there was no real spine to the story. No timing catalyst, no financial plan, no concrete trigger for this supposed epiphany. When the manager followed up with, "How did you prepare for the income reduction?" the answers dissolved into fog. No specifics about budgeting. No conversation timelines with a spouse. No runway calculation. Nothing that real life demands when you walk away from stability. The thought process felt manufactured, not lived. And eventually, the truth surfaced. The candidate had been laid off and was trying to spin it positively. Authentic decisions, especially big ones, carry texture. People can describe them naturally because they actually wrestled with them. If someone truly left a good job for meaningful work, their reasoning sounds like a human life, not a poster. You'd hear honest conflict. I'd been feeling unfulfilled for months. Then my dad's health scare snapped me awake. I spent weeks researching what a 20% salary cut would mean, ran numbers on our mortgage, and talked with my spouse about downsizing. It wasn't easy, but staying felt like betraying what matters to me. That is what genuine deliberation sounds like. Timeline, triggers, calculations, conversations, and a value judgment at the center. Marcus Aurelius modeled this rigor in his private reflections. He documented his choices by weighing multiple factors, considering consequences, and acknowledging inner conflict. He understood that authentic decisions reflect character, and because they truly happened in the mind, they can be explained coherently from different angles without falling apart. The Stoics taught that virtuous action requires thoughtful deliberation. So when someone claims a major decision but cannot explain their reasoning, no sequence, no trade-offs, no before this, then that, it's a signal. Either the decision didn't occur as described, or the story is being engineered to impress rather than to inform. This works because decision-making reveals character consistency. People's choices usually line up with their known values and patterns. If someone insists on a choice that contradicts everything you know about them, with no convincing bridge explaining the deviation, fabrication becomes likely authentic. Responses include natural complexity and struggle. I went back and forth for weeks. I spoke with my mentor, priced out Cobra versus marketplace insurance, and realized that staying meant compromising values I wasn't willing to sacrifice. The reasoning connects to real constraints and known priorities. It feels wrestled with. Deceptive responses lack this grain. They sound like airbrushed posters. I just felt it was right. Right how? Right when? Right according to what constraint or value? Without specifics, the logic doesn't match the person's established character or circumstances. Seneca understood this well. To evaluate a claim, examine the reasoning behind it, because reasoning exposes both the story and the storyteller. Use this question to see whether a narrative aligns with logical thinking and authentic human decision-making. Frame it with sincere curiosity. Help me understand what went into that choice. It sounds like it required careful consideration. When the why is real, it flows. When it's fabricated, it frays. And that is why this fifth question so often reveals the truth. In the end, remember what this is truly about. Just like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca taught, your goal isn't to trap anyone or win conversations. It's to seek wisdom about authenticity and character. The purpose of these 5 questions is not to humiliate or expose others, but to understand reality while keeping your own virtue intact. Together, these questions form a calm and powerful framework, a way to uncover truth gently, without anger or accusation. They allow you to see through deception while protecting your integrity and emotional peace. Because in a world where words can be masks, discernment becomes your armor. You're not trying to cause fear, conflict, or chaos. You're cultivating the kind of quiet intelligence that lets you make wise decisions in your relationships, in your work, and in the way you choose to trust. When you notice dishonesty, don't rush to react. Use that knowledge wisely. Protect yourself where needed. Adjust your expectations accordingly, but never let someone else's deceit pull you away from your own principles. That's what Stoicism is all about, staying virtuous even when others are not. Because not all lies are born from malice. Some people lie to protect someone's feelings. Some lie from fear or shame. And yes, some lie to manipulate or harm. Understanding why someone deceives you doesn't excuse the behavior, but it helps you respond with clarity instead of anger. That's how you maintain control, not by exposing others, but by mastering yourself. These 5 questions work because truth has a natural structure. It bends, but never breaks under gentle examination. Lies, on the other hand, are rigid. They shatter the moment you press them softly. That's why the calm, measured curiosity of a Stoic mind is often more powerful than any confrontation. If you found these lessons valuable, take a moment, like this video, subscribe, and stay with us for more Stoic wisdom on reading human nature and protecting your peace with virtue. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever used questions like these to uncover the truth? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else develop the same strength of discernment. Remember this: seeking truth is a virtue. When it's done with wisdom, compassion, and the noble purpose of becoming a little more honest, a little more awake, and a little more free.